Happy New Year and welcome to the first of the Wednesday Web Chats for 2021. I'm Kanan Chandran, the publisher of stormasia.com, and this is our regular series of discussions with panelists who hail from a variety of industries who are here to share their expertise and their experience with us based on the topics we raise. Today's session, being the first of the year, is 2021 Vision with 2020 Hindsight. And I think it's been a strange year last year, 2020, what with COVID and all the shutdowns and the cessation of businesses and the slowdown of businesses. The world has sort of ground to a slow pace, but it's starting to pick up, or so we think. And so too the virus is coming across with a new mutation. A lot of uncertainties still lie ahead of us, but I thought we should have some points of view from our panelists today. So we've got Anthony Wong, the founder and CEO of Creative Eateries. He started in hospitality with a Hyatt Group and continued as an F&B entrepreneur. That was 36 years ago. And since then, he has started numerous restaurant concepts with more than 40 outlets in the region, including the Bangkok Jam, Barossa, and Hot Stones, which you might be familiar with. And he's also got 2 catering arms. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And we've got Dr. Sanjay Kuttan, who's the Executive Director of the Singapore Maritime Institute. Sanjay has had many senior roles in the private and public sectors. ExxonMobil, McKinsey, Energy Market Authority, Energy Research Institute at NTU. And now with the Maritime Institute, he sort of develops the programs to see where we headed in that direction. Welcome, Sanjay. Then we've got Haresh Khoobchandani, who's the Vice President of Sales at Autodesk Asia Pacific. Haresh has worked in large organizations like the Singapore Airlines, Microsoft, and the REA Group. And here he is responsible for the strategic direction and profitability of the business, which is a global leader in 3D design, engineering, and entertainment software. Welcome, Haresh.
Hey, good to be here, Karan.
And our final panelist is Gibu Mathew, who's the Vice President and GM Asia Pacific of Zoho Corp. Zoho develops suites of user-friendly programs to facilitate organizational efficiency. 21 years with the company, he's set strategy and vision for the region. Welcome, Gibu. Welcome, gentlemen, to today's session. And I think taking up on the fact that we've just entered 2021, what sort of significant changes do you see your businesses undergoing or going to undertake in 2021? Anthony, you've been in probably the hardest hit industry of all, the F&B business. How will you approach 2021?
Well, I think for the food and beverage industry, it all depends on how you start off the year 2019. You know, I think it is very important that you start the year 2020 on a strong financial position, and that you have taken advantage of all the many years of digital transformation that Enterprise Singapore has been encouraging a lot of food and beverage operators. Now, if you have done most of that transformation and have a reasonable, good financial position in January 2020, I think you would be you would have just you would survive 2020, and surprisingly, the second half of last year, 2020, since the opening of the Circuit Breaker 2, as I'm sure all of you all read that in the news, that food and beverage, a lot of restaurants are very well patronized, and some are doing exceptionally well, especially the high end. So moving forward, I think the trend of the food and beverage industry for the next 6 months at least will be very similar to what it was the last 6 months. So using that as a gauge, I would say that if you have a strong financial position in January 2021, and you have been enjoying the the traction of the last part of the last 6 months of 2020, you would be benefiting from the traction of customers that is locked down within Singapore. However, of course, I would call all this an aberration, because it is not exactly the true economy, because as long as the skies are not open and our country is not open, tourism is not coming in, what we are really enjoying is just what is within this island. So we have to be mindful of that there are still surprises along the way. But a strong P&L in the beginning of January and a good second half of last year will really help you move forward in the next 6 months in 2021.
So that's the F&B side of things. For the others on the panel, it's quite a different situation. I mean, yours is a global thing. You're not so affected by tourism and things like that, right? So have you seen an increase in demand for your services, Gibu and Haresh and Sanjay as well? Gibu?
Yeah, yeah. So from our perspective, we have seen a fairly good 2020 itself. So first of all, thank you for asking me that question. And one thing that we feel as a company, we being a cloud technology company, cloud is an enabler, and technology itself has been an enabler over so many, I would say almost close to a decade now. And in the past, different times in the last 20 years, we moved from using desktops to laptops to smartphones. We saw data mobility and the various trends over the last two decades. Well, in 2020, what we saw was the need for businesses to be agile and mobility of your work itself between home and office and your BCP. If you look at early March timeframe when BCP was the biggest keyword that everybody were talking about. So all these, right, are actually enabled by cloud itself as a technology. And we feel that that's an important aspect, and that's going to be accelerated because of what has happened in 2020. And that's definitely going to be an important aspect going to 2021. And yeah, that's one important thing that I would like to share.
Okay, cloud. Haresh, how about your side?
I think just building off Gibu, obviously we're in a SaaS ecosystem, software as a service. What's interesting about this year was I think more and more businesses have had to think about what resiliency means to their business, and how technology features as part of building resiliency. And I think in the industries we serve, and one of the biggest industries we serve, which is a big driver of the Singapore economy, is construction, which was also obviously badly hit. But the construction industry also has been one of the laggards in terms of adopting digital technologies. And that's obviously changing very, very quickly, as we've seen our cloud business grow very strongly across the APAC region and here in Singapore as well. So I think for us, more and more adoption of digital technology to drive continuity so that, businesses can carry on. Technologies to basically allow for convergence, of functions like design and build. What are the technologies that allow facilitation of that convergence so that multiple people across different disciplines in the ecosystem can actually collaborate? We started to see more of that happen, and I think that's going to be the future, as well as we go forward, and how people collaborate using technology. So we see adoption growing very fast there. And I think more and more now, with the disruptive nature of the world we live in, and pre-pandemic was digital disruption. Currently now it's a pandemic-driven disruption. But the world goes on, businesses go on. There will be challenges. And so we're seeing a lot more adoption of digital technology. And that's obviously been reflected in our global results get to report.
Okay. And Sanjay, how has it been for you?
So I guess, Karan, just to follow up from Gibu and Haresh, what we are seeing, at least in the maritime sector and the need for digitalization, is creating work process efficiencies. In the past, where every transaction had 5 to 10 to 15 touch points, which was done physically, and I think the COVID kind of limited that touch points, whether it's delivering documents and getting documents signed off and bill of ladings and things like that. A lot of this has now gone onto the electronic highway and digitalized a lot of these processes, which has actually created a lot more efficiency. So the amount of time wasted in getting through the process has now come down significantly. And when you're in the logistics business, and shipping is very much a logistic business, how fast you can move your vessel is really a money factor around that, right? Time is really money in the logistics business. So I think you will see more and more of this coming along, because you realize the work efficiencies coming out from this forced digitalization scenario would benefit the entire industry and the consumers. The second thing is, with the comfort level and having data on platforms and it being shared, people, if you remember, if you go back a couple of years, people were just scared to put data because of data protection. And, you don't know what's going to happen. Someone will take my data. But we are forced now to begin to build trust within the ecosystem that you're operating on to share that data. And that information has now also allowed people to think how we can make it even more efficient than the low-hanging fruits, and how do you take out waste from the entire work processes. And I think this is the new opportunity that's coming on, whether be it algorithms, because of the complex nature of multiple touch points when you're dealing with this. I think from our perspective, in our work that we are doing, one of the main things we do is we engage the industry. In the past, we have built a history over the last 9 years. SMI was set up in 2011, but where we always said we had to have a meeting in the hotel and everyone has to come together. And the number of people you could touch and engage was really a function of your budget. Right? If you had a bigger budget, you could get more people. But the platforms has actually opened up not only to people that you can engage physically in the country, but you can engage everyone around the world, and we had doubled our engagement level with multiple countries in our annual event, which was unprecedented, right? Because we had it online. So, I think that it'll change the way we look at 2021. We'll say, do I have to spend all that hotel food and money? Now, how can I actually maximize my limited resources, get the biggest impact? And we start rethinking, because we've actually moved out of our comfort zone, right? And then realized that we could actually thrive in this new zone of comfort, So I think that you'll see 2021 leveraging all these kind of lessons going forward.
And I just want to, sorry, Karan, I just want to quickly build on Sanjay raised a really good point on this point on data. And over time, I've seen a lot of people talk about data, but actually have very little idea of how to capture data, manage data, synthesize data, and translate data into insights and insights into action. It's easy to turn around and talk about data being the new currency, or as the economists say, the new oil, But it's really important for organizations, large and small, to start now thinking about what their data strategy is. And that's not the role of an IT guy. That's the role of the CEO, to be directly involved in saying, how do I use data to inform what I do next, to inform where I go, to inform how I improve? And I think that's going to be, and that I think is a imperative. It was an imperative. It is even more of an imperative now than it's ever been before. And it's going to continue to grow. And that's going to be the difference between companies surviving potentially and doing well and thriving, and companies who at some point get knocked off their perch by newcomers.
Sanjay, a couple of points that you raised, I think are worth elaborating on. One, the fact that everybody is going virtual is probably not good news for the MICE industry. We don't have somebody from that industry here. They seem a bit reluctant to get on this platform at this point in time, because they are very uncertain about what lies ahead as well. Well, Anthony, you'd be the closest to that in terms of the food and sort of catering businesses that you do. You cater for events. And if what Sanjay says is true and people say, nah, we don't need to have a big event, we can do it virtually. How will that affect your business? And it's also one of the questions that has come up, two of the questions that have come up so far from the audience. Will there be a knock-on effect from 2020 and the change in behavior for your business?
Well, I think the MICE business, everyone is trying very hard to find a way forward. The catering business is rather in the doldrum right now. As you see, the numbers came out yesterday. In the month of November, catering business dropped 75% year on year. We don't see this coming up, going back to normal at any time soon. So the catering business today is very niche. Everyone is just holding on as long as they can, but I see more consolidation in the months to come, and the volume of business is not going to go up at any time in the next 6 months. So that's a challenge. So caterers have to really find a way to pivot and find a way to move forward.
Yeah, so you were also saying that if you had a strong 2020 P&L at the start and you had a reasonable pickup in the second half of 2020, then you should be okay for this year, right? Kind of.
Yes.
That's what you said. Now, that's maybe the position of your company, but I think a lot of companies out there are existing month to month, and they would have been hit suddenly by what transpired at the end of 2019 and into 2020. So how do you see companies like that trying to continue? What do you suggest they try and do now? And how many do you think you should just say, please, maybe you should fold because it's not a tenable situation to be in?
Yeah. If you have a spread of product, like for example, like for ourselves, we run restaurants and we do catering, and catering forms less than 20% of our business, so we are not so impacted. Now, if catering is 100% of your business, then I think you need to immediately pivot your business to a different segment of the market. So if your catering business have always been dependent on the MICE business, then you really need to do something about it. You know, I mean, you had a good whole of 2020 to do that, and I don't think it's going to change any much in the next 6 months. So you need to find a way to pivot your business. So I think the best is to I think there will be further consolidation in the catering business, especially when the support scheme is going to curtail, and various support measures is going to be reduced. So so it all depends on which part of the business you are in and at what position you are. Yeah.
Kanan, can I just jump in here, right? I don't want to give the impression that we're going to be living a totally virtual life, you know, at work, right? I think that's not the point. I think the point is we have to build a new paradigm, right? And the way we operate. In the past, we were stuck with the idea that there was only one way of doing things, you know, and there was other ways of interacting was sub-efficient. You know, we had this notion, unless I press the flesh, I could never get a deal, right? And this 2020 has taught us that that is not completely true. That in some cases it is true. You need to press the flesh to get the deal. But a lot of business still met their P&L targets that they had planned for in 2019 for 2020. The point I was trying to make is we need to start thinking, are there hybrid models? Right? So if my purpose is to reach out to my content to as many people possible, then maybe I take the platform route. However, if my purpose is to bring people so that they can talk and meet, and we are in a less critical pandemic scenario or we've passed it, then can we have networking events, post content delivery on platform. 2 hours later, we meet at venue A, and we have our the usual. So we need to start thinking, for that why we do certain things, for what purpose, to really get the bang out of the buck. And I think in those scenarios, the catering businesses, the F&B business need also to start to readjust their models, their operating models, to cater for these new ways of engagement, industry and business engagement, when we think about 2021.
Yeah, I think everyone is trying very hard to come out of new ways. I see like the past 2 weeks, we have clients requesting for certain products that suits their customers. Like in the month of December, we did a jewelry exhibition, which is usually done in a big way over a period of 7 days. But instead of doing it and bringing people to the exhibition hall, they pivoted it to various boutiques in jewelry shops and watches, and in smaller groups of 20, and things were done in a more it's a different way, but yet still extending a certain degree of class. So I think we need to create new products and make the customer feel comfortable. And that's the way to move forward. It definitely is not going back to status quo what it was before.
Do you think the employee mindset is, your business development people, do you think their mindsets, this applies to all of you, do you think their mindsets are too fixed in doing things in a certain way because it has worked thus far, up to end of 2019 maybe? Then 2020 came along and shaked everything around, banged their heads around a bit. Are they able to come into 2021 now, and as things open up, and hopefully it will continue to do so, and be able to do, as you said, Anthony, to think differently, find new ways of developing products and services that will help different types of customers?
I think that's going to be the number one skill that needs to be developed as we go forward. Everyone talks about the hard skills, the cognitives, the skills like being an AI or going to STEM and learning those hard coding skills and stuff. I actually think the number one skill, and this is broadly humanity, is to be able to develop an adaptive, agile and learning mindset. Being willing to try, even some of the things that Anthony talked about. Nobody knows if it's going to work. You can turn around and adapt and try new things. It may fail, and you're going to be ready for that. So the reality is there's a very new world unfolding, in the next 10, 20, 30 years ahead of us. If you understand exponential technologies that are out there, that are coming through, the world is changing. The entire paradigm is changing, including what we talked about 10, 15 years ago in telehealth. Today is real. And that is accelerating. And that's going to be a really big part of addressing some of the fundamental issues societies are facing around health, on healthcare, right? So we have to be ready for paradigm changes. And the only way to be ready is to be radically open so that we can try new things, we can adapt, we are willing to turn around and make mistakes. And I think if we don't do that, then I think we are going to turn around and have a very difficult time.
Yeah, and can I just add to Haresh? I think this is where leadership really hits the road. The quality of leadership really matters now, because you're going to have to be able to instill the confidence in your employees that we're going to try something different. There's a higher chance of failing because we have never done it before, but yet let's think through this and then make a go at it and see how successful we are. And I think the leadership level needs to take the first step to actually corral their employees, to help them make this mindset change. Even like what Haresh was talking about in terms of how they think about data, right? It is the leadership level that needs to say, hey, I want these questions answered so I can make better decisions. And how can data help me make those better decisions? And also the leadership role here becomes even more pertinent in a crisis situation and getting out and succeeding in a crisis.
Gibu, you were going to say something. Sorry, Anthony. Gibu, yeah?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to what Haresh and even Sanjay just mentioned. If you look at, technology itself, right, as an independent thing doesn't help. right? And if you look at the businesses out there, they already have the experience in specific industries in a specific context. And some new person who comes out of college or school with new technology knowledge cannot get into that industry. And as a business, I strongly feel that they have the time to quickly adapt this, given the current pandemic situation, to really pick up and understand this new opportunities available in terms of technology, mash it up with what you have as an industry knowledge. And I would say is what is probably the digital transformation that we have been talking about for so long. And the last few few or 3 quarters, I would say, we have all seen how that is possible. And this contextual industry knowledge is only available to that industry or to the person who's already in that industry. And that is already there with a lot of SMEs and other businesses out there. So they just have to figure out, and they are the best people to figure out how this technology can work. Because today the skill gap also is there. You have people who know technology, but they don't know the industry. And you also have industry, but they don't have much technology knowledge. But that's not getting technology in is easier than the other way around. And that's the big opportunity that all businesses can actually grab. And it's just about thinking and, like what Harish and Sanjay just mentioned, it's about analyzing and being the leader who gets the transformation done for your business.
And I just want to add, this is where everyone needs to realize the simplest and easiest portion in this whole conversation and thing is the technology. There's a ton out there, a ton of smart people. But technology is the enabler to the problem we want to solve, or the future we want to create, or the business we want to ensure continuity. And that's where we need to turn around and learn how to apply the technology. So technology is like putting the cart before the horse. We need to put the horse before the cart in order for us to go forward. And technology is the cart, not the horse.
But you need both the cart and the horse, nevertheless.
Absolutely,
So,
you need both, but but you can't move if you put the cart before the horse.
It'll be harder work. Sorry, Anthony, you were going to say something just now.
Yeah, I was going to add to what Sanjay said that leadership is so essential in today's fighting this pandemic and pivoting your business. I think in our food and beverage business, we really feel we have a lot of challenges in the sense that number one, we have challenges of the number of new restaurants coming online in the next 6 months is just amazing. There are new restaurants opening almost every week for the next 6 months, and if your concept or if your restaurant has not adapted, have not changed, you will be left behind. So transformation of your concept is important. Number two is the employee situation is that we are getting a lot more elderly people coming into the organization, and then they have to latch on very quickly to the way we run our business, the way we use digital and technology within the food and beverage industry, and it's very challenging to engage elderly employees. That's why I think companies should enhance their HR department, their training department, the IT department to help the front line to keep up with the change in technology. So these are some of the changes. But all in all, everything comes from the top leadership to believe in it, that that's the only way forward, and push it down and make sure everybody gets move along. Yeah.
Haresh and Gibu, in your industry, have you seen a lot more increase in demand for new ways of doing things? Like Anthony just said, you got a lot more older people coming into the workforce. Have there been requests to make for more sort of automated systems, or to be able to train people in a quicker way to get up to speed with new technology?
I think there are many companies, tech companies, who are investing significant amounts of money into retraining workers. And what I love about what's happening right now is the fact that government, academia, and the private sector are coming together, working together to be able to enable this. IBM is doing a whole bunch of stuff around training people on cloud technologies. Microsoft doing a whole bunch of stuff. Facebook's doing a whole bunch of stuff. Singapore Institute of Management is partnering with technology companies to retrain workers and their skill sets, PMETs, and then find them jobs in the additive manufacturing space, for example. And we're partnering with them. So there's a lot of that that's happening right now, which I think is incredibly powerful. And I think more needs to be done. But I think more needs to be done at an individual level, not just at the government. Governments, I think, giving and creating a platform for people to say, I want to come on that platform, be part of it so that I can reskill, retrain. That brings back to the earlier point about mindsets, how people are now need to turn around and be open to wanting to retrain and reskill. But fundamentally, I go back to, I think Anthony said some things that kind of resonated with me. And the one thing I want to say is this whole concept of work. Work is something we do, not a place we go to. We've been conditioned to wake up in the morning, go to the office, say we're going to work. So when you think about the virtual world we live in now, which is, I think, a point Sanjay made earlier, which is, hey, we can do stuff now virtually and pretty effectively too. And I think that's the mindset we all need to kind of rewire our brains to say, hey, work is something we do. Whether we do it in Starbucks, whether we do it in office, whether we do it at home. Now, you need a conducive environment to be able to do some good work. Now, that is the conversation that also needs to be had. So how do I create that environment in Singapore, in my home? How do I create that environment in a Starbucks or wherever else I am, given the constraints, right? And that's also fundamentally changing demographic movements around the world. If you look at the US, even in Singapore, when you look at property, still being sold, as an example, because of that. So to me, I think we're seeing a lot more of that happen, but I think there are a whole bunch of byproducts that are evolving and coming mainstream that we need to start anticipating.
Kannan, can I just jump in on this training thing?
Sorry, I think Gibu wanted to say something.
Okay, sure.
I'll let you jump in.
Sorry about it. Yeah. So, well, if you look at from our perspective, we have a very broad portfolio of products, and I would say, of course, and these are products that focus on different titles in an organization. So when we look at some of the products that had terrific growth in 2020, I look at that as a proxy to what the industry itself needs. Like, for example, this online meeting or remote control software, which actually helps in terms of enabling activity in the office. So as a proxy to whether people need more training, was there a lot of setups happening remotely, etc.? Those were actually, those were technology tools that were actually being sold at a higher clip for us. And that is actually a proxy which, to your question on understanding, was there an increase in the need for enabling remote work or enabling training online? So I feel, yes, the answer to your question is yes, there has been a great increase in the industry at large in terms of helping enable people learn and even work online.
Sorry, yes, Sanjay.
Yeah, I know when we talk about training, I think we trivialize it to the point that we just think that we just throw some people into the classroom for 3 months and then they're out there and ready to go. And I think what we fail to understand is how we look at reskilling, upskilling, and new skilling. The foundation, the point where they start from at any point of their life and where they're supposed to be effective in delivering impact for the company that they're going to eventually get absorbed into, that chasm differs considerably between the entire population of students that come into the classroom. It's very different when you're in primary 6, you go to Sec 1, Sec 2. Even then, you still have a chasm between the good and the bad. But it becomes even greater in the workforce. So we really need to start thinking through the kind of people that we're bringing on board. What are they built? What's their foundation and where they need to go? And what are those steps? And it can't just be classroom, then go and perform. It has to be an iterative process between the field and the class. You do just-in-time training. You need to think through different training methods to make sure that they can effectively be productive as fast as possible for the companies that are going to employ them. Otherwise, you'll find this lag period, and it becomes not only a burden to the system that they're going to be hosted in, it becomes a burden to also the people that they're going to have to work with, you know. So we need to really think through this whole skilling process in a more systematic and purposeful way if we want to get people truly across the line, and not just say go attend a class and, you know, and then therefore go and get a job. You know, I don't think it works that way anymore.
Yeah.
Since we are on this subject of business moving forward in the year 2021, based on the hindsight of 2020, I also feel that in the last, especially in the last, the most of 2020, we spent a lot of time trying to digitalize, trying to transform, trying to go into clouds and platforms and online. You name it, we've done it. However, I think that you know, a lot of businesses have to go back to their core business. And what is their core business? If you are in retail, if you are in food and beverage, if you are in logistics, if you are in manufacturing or whatever business, yes, the transformation is a very important part to move forward. But I think it's also important that businesses go back to what their core business is, and look at their product and services to move forward in 2021 and years ahead. Sometimes I always feel that sometimes a lot of companies are spending too much time trying to digitalize and transform. They kind of neglect their main core business, you know, and it's also, it defeats the purpose. If you, like, for example, if you're in the food and beverage business, if you don't look after your food and beverage product and your service quality, you can have the most digitalized and most transform platform, what you name it, you're not gonna move very fast forward. You know, I think the core product, your core product has to be correct, and that's very important.
Absolutely.
Which is why technology is the enabler. Technology is not the solution. That's basically it. You
That's
use technology to solve a problem. You don't use technology because I have to use technology.
Totally, I agree and understand. But the thing is that the last 10 months, all companies have been told, encouraged to transform and digitalize and enable, you know. But I think sometimes we miss not focusing on our core products, which is very important.
Which brings me to the question by Sviku about the words paradigm and pivot having been used a lot of late, and even in this session. Is that something that should be applied to the civil service? Because Anthony was saying there's been a lot of instruction to digitalize and to start doing the technology, go down the technology route. But do you think government policies and the civil service should also learn to pivot and switch and be relevant to the times? Do you think there's enough of that happening? Because the end result of that not taking place is that it'll affect how SMEs, MNCs, and citizens will perform down the line as well. Sanjay, any views on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think we had to wait for the crisis to see how the civil service has constantly re-examine itself, you know, the way it operates, and, you know, the way it pivots, and the way they change their paradigm. I think the question really is sometimes it's about the speed of change. And I think when you're in the civil service, the speed of change is a bit more deliberate because of the potential impact across a whole nation. You know, if a company pivots, it's only its customers, but if your policy pivots, the whole nation is affected. So, you know, there's a bit more thinking through the issues, and, you know, weighing the pros and cons, because there's never a perfect solution in any scenario, right? So I think you have seen the civil service pivot and change their paradigm. Whether it's fast enough, did they pivot in the right direction? That's another debate as well, right? But I think you have to give credit, at least during the crisis moment, when the whole nation was actually on its knees and grind to the halt. the ministries had to come together and start thinking through how else do we behave, how else do we operate, how else do we govern, right, to make sure that we all get through this crisis together, right? And I think that I have three words, right? Patience, discipline, and trust. And I think this is the time when we have to adhere to these three values if we're going to get through this together. And yeah, so that's my answer about on pivoting and paradigm shifts in the civil service. Not that I'm a civil servant, though, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. The word trust also comes up a fair bit, and I think we talked about data and who's responsible for it and how is it going to be used. I think of late the Trace Together app and all that issues that are being raised, we should talk about it, because I think it kind of erodes trust when you say one thing and then almost immediately after start changing the goalposts. This, of course, is in reference to the Trace Together app and the data and how it will be used. How should companies manage this whole area of data? Should there be specific rules and guidelines? I think there are, but it seems as if we can get around it in some form or fashion. Should there be more stringent rules and regulations put in place in terms of how data is used, both in private and in public?
I think there are very stringent rules on how data needs to be captured and used. So I think there's a lot of work happening on that particular front. Are there people who don't understand and not necessarily following it? Possibly, but I think that's I think it's better today than it was last year. So I think there's more and more governance around data taking place in organizations, because there have been enforcement of the law, especially in Singapore, and I've seen that firsthand, and I think that's good. But I think if you take a Singapore view and take a global view, I think there are very stringent laws. In fact, at some point, marketing technology solutions have to figure out how they operate within the laws, because their scope of what they can capture and what they can use and what they can target got drastically reduced. So I actually think there is. Can more be done? Yeah, you could potentially say, yeah. Is there enforcement of the law? And I think that differs country to country. But I think definitely there are some stringent data guidance and policies out there.
So Gibu and Sanjay, you both operate in sort of a larger geographic space, right? I mean, how do you find the handling of COVID and the situation by the various countries? What do you think that their responses would do to their own country's reputation, image, and ongoing business transactions?
Okay, so two things. One was about the data handling itself. You asked initially, Kannan. So, well, from our perspective, one important thing when it comes to data itself is the handler of the data shouldn't have a commercial interest in that, that privacy or private information of an individual. Well, that's something which is one of the biggest reasons why data has been manipulated in the way it's not supposed to be in the past. So that's definitely an important thing when you're giving it to a specific entity. So when you look at it as a government, that doesn't come into the purview. But when it comes to private businesses handling your personal information, I think privacy and security are equally important. And hence, it has to be handled according to the best possible practices. Now, coming to the second part of your question on how has COVID itself affected business in different countries and perceptions, right, in different countries? Definitely the way a country handles the pandemic does have an impact on how businesses look at a specific country. But this has been a very unique, this is a pandemic as it is called, right? So I would say it may not be really directly correlated to business decisions on how a country handled it. But I would say it definitely showcases, say, for example, I would call it as, how Singapore handled it, right? I would say it is more of smartly locally handled in a unique way, which is probably very handled really well. How Singapore itself handled this the pandemic right from the beginning till now. So definitely it shows thought leadership as an industry or as a geography, and yeah, that shows up in how businesses also react. Or I would say that shows us as how a company itself learns or industry learns, seeing that leadership.
Haresh, Sanjay, yeah?
Yeah, I think Sanjay.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on the data issue. And to me, there are two buckets of data. One is compliance, and one is voluntary, and they have different rules around that. But I think your point on the commentary on the way we deal with the region and what we're doing in Singapore is far more pertinent, because Singapore is always thrived on its ability to extract value from the region it operates in, right? Whether it's Southeast Asia, Asia, and the rest of the world. Coming out of this crisis and going into 2021, the ability for Singapore's expertise, be it in the services or technologies, whatever, to leverage the market outside the borders of Singapore is going to be critical to the survival. Whatever we do here to instill confidence in other countries that the people that are coming out of Singapore are safe, right, and can enter your country and not become a cluster spreader, super spreader event, right, is going to be very important for situations where you're going to have to carry on building that business. And I think what the government is trying to do is, in a sense, on point, because unless we ourselves are not convinced that we can control it, how can we convince others that you could actually go out and carry on to build a business? That the virtual platform can only do so much, right? But there is that need to be out in the region, and I think what we're doing to be able to do that is going to be driven by data, because it has to be fact-based, right? You can't say I have a sense that this guy is okay and therefore he can go, right? There must be a fact-based scientific reason to prove to governments in the other parts of the world that this guy is safe or this group is safe, that they can travel and not become a pain point in your country. So I think so we need to think about these things and not forget that all of us who was on social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and all that, WhatsApp, there's so much of our information already going out.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what are we trying to hold back that nobody knows except you? You know what I mean? So anyway, I have my own position on the whole data privacy thing, but
I'm sure we all do. Okay, we've kind of exceeded the time for the session, but let me just ask you all a parting question. Given the challenging times that we've had and are having and we're living through, have you become more inventive as a result in terms of how you approach issues? Have you, and if so, if you could just provide one example of how you've been more inventive than you would have been in the past. Sanjay?
Yeah, I think like I mentioned earlier, I think is really looking at the way we engage the people or stakeholders and the people that we are set up and tasked to engage with in a very different way, and look at all the different platforms available for us, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, and really play around with those flexibilities of these systems, and then come up with the appropriate programs that are targeted.
Okay, Gibu?
Yeah, so as a company, I think one of the big transformations that we had to learn was also how, from our own usage of our products, and when our all employees went working from home since March, right? So we actually invented ourselves and really transformed our products to actually support that concept, and how there is a need for a zero trust environment in terms of cloud security itself, so that wherever be the employee or the user, their business data is secure and available seamlessly. So I think that's one of the big things that we are doing. And as a learning from 2020, I would say that's about how integrated product suites can actually help the industry or the businesses at large.
And on an ongoing basis as well, right? I mean, it was a good platform for you to figure something out and then start applying it past the pandemic. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Haresh?
As a company, we're doing a couple of things. The one key characteristic, I think we're listening much more to our customers and our employees. And when I say listening, I mean we're staying close to them, and then we're adapting according to what they need. To some extent, at the earlier times of the pandemic, we even allowed them free usage of our software. And when I talk about customers, I mean we're talking about partner ecosystem. And they went through a very fragile period, and we supported them through that again. For the employees, there's a lot of work that we as a company have done to look after all facets of the employees, from mental health to physical health, to how we help provide benefits that allow employees to be able to use it for what is necessary for them. So a lot of customization and personalization of that as well. So staying close, listening, and then constantly adapting every quarter, bottoms up based on what they need is what we've been doing, and we continue to.
Thanks, Anthony. How about you?
I think the whole COVID situation, everyone in Creative Eateries, I think we learned three things. From the onset in February, I think we learned three things. We learned how to stay calm, and we learned not to panic, and we really learned how to be proactive. And I think the entire company did very well in all these three areas. We stayed calm, we didn't panic, and we were very proactive to be where we are today in 2021.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you so much for all of that. I think the parting shots were very useful in terms of the approaches that you can take when it comes to dealing with the pandemic, and probably even past that when it comes to difficult situations. If anything else, I think the pandemic will probably train you to be more adaptable and more resilient to things that come your way, and learn how to bend with the wind or figure new ways of approaching a problem. And of course, besides technology, there are people that you can talk to and other sort of resources that you should make full use of. Sanjay, Gibu, Haresh, Anthony, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your light with us, and to the audience as well.
Thank you, guys.
For your questions.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks,
Thanks, everyone. It's great to meet everyone, and thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next session is in 2 weeks' time on the 20th of January. We are doing it from the 1st and 3rd Wednesdays of each month. See you. Take care.
Bye.